Hello. Do you think that the crackdown of vaping will decrease the number of students that vape, or do you think that it will only perpetuate more illegal avenues to purchase vapes?
Well, this is very much in your remit again, Mark, but I want to bring in a couple of other people first before we put the pressure on you, if I can be blunt. Di, how big an issue is this in your electorate? Is it coming up a lot? I mean, I know
it's not coming up, but I spoke with a doctor today and, talking about vaping, and he said it's such a huge, a real big problem. And he said the vaping is that young people in particular, do it all the time, as opposed to, say, smoking, you can stop. Whereas vaping, apparently, the only time you stop, according to the doctor, is when you go to sleep. And it's so dangerous from his perspective that you can do it at work, you can just do it any time. And the chemicals that's in there that kill sort of that kind of that smoke, in order for people to vape as if they're not smoking, is really dangerous. So he thinks is a real big problem, and he's of a Middle Eastern background. He said it's a very huge problem within the community. I haven't come across many people who vape, but I hear a lot about it, not in my community. I think more of them smoke cigarettes than actually vape.
Wow.
Yeah.
In fact, I've heard of the number of people turning to cigarettes in order to quit vaping. The absolute opposite of what was promised, because you have to go outside. And it's a whole kerfuffle to smoke a cigarette.
So it's harder to smoke a cigarette,
but people, especially when you're working at home, people are just sitting there vaping all day.
All the time, yeah.
And so they've switched to cigarettes in order to quit vaping.
OK, that's broken my brain. Jennifer, it really has. Obviously, there was a huge effort, and Australia did a very good job, I think, of trying to reduce smoking rates. Have we just got the next problem that we've now created for ourselves?
I mean, I speak more as a family member of someone who's switched from smoking to vaping, and it certainly hasn't decreased the nicotine intake that I've seen. I mean, it seems to be an incredibly addictive substance. And I was talking to a colleague today who was talking about his very young child, I think about 11 years old, who was asking Dad about, what would you think if I tried vaping? I mean, this is something that's really... 11, really very young age where kids have access to this. And the fact that it tastes like a candy, smells like a candy, tastes great is incredibly dangerous. And I know my naive little 9-year-old boy would pick that up just as well as he would a lolly. So, yeah, it's concerning.
Now, Mark Butler, you have announced a crackdown and a different regime.
Yep.
It's been several months. We don't really have a timeline. When are we going to get the timeline? And what are you going to do about all the illegal vapes coming into the country in the black market? Because that's where lots of young people are accessing.
And that's really the problem. The border has been completely open, so they've been flooding in. We will put in place a regulation before the end of this year. We've been working very hard with states on putting together a single piece of legislation that will cover the field in terms of implementing our vape regulations. We were thinking we might have to pass legislation through every parliament in the country, which have been very difficult. So we're aiming to get that regulation in by the end of the year and shut the border.
Be able to do it just at the federal level?
Yes, and shut the border. Yes,
what does that look like? What do you mean? How do you shut the border?
We'll prohibit the import of vapes. Okay. At the moment, they're completely open. And this idea that we were sold, all communities all around the world, that this was some benevolent therapeutic good to help hardened smokers kick the habit, most of them middle-aged and older, is utter bunkum. You know, have a look at these things. They're made to look like highlighter pens so that kids can store them in their pencil case. They have pink unicorns on them. They are bubblegum flavoured. The stores that sell them are deliberately being set up down the road from schools like the ones that the kids in the audience go to. I mean, this is a cynical, deliberate tactic on the part of big tobacco to recruit a new generation to nicotine.
Okay.
And it's working. That's the tragic thing. It's working.
Drugs are illegal
let me finish this. The only cohort in the community where smoking rates are going up is young people. And it's because they are 3 times more likely to take up cigarettes if they're vaped. And pretty much the only people vaping in the community is young people. You know, our generation, they're not vaping. No. It's high school kids are vaping. Very young adults are vaping. Increasingly, primary school kids are vaping. That's why school communities tell us now the number one behavioural issue they have now in their schools is vaping. And I am utterly determined to stamp it out. This is a public health menace. You need to stamp it out.
OK, you make it illegal. Right now, cocaine's illegal.
You can't buy cocaine at a store that's deliberately set up down the road from this school.
But people are accessing illegal drugs.
Well,
the point is policing. So what are you going to do about the policing part of the story?
So I've said, and I'm seeing Border Force tomorrow to have a look at some vapes that have been seized. At the border, we have significant resources for Border Force and the TGA to stop these things coming in the first place. But we don't pretend there's not going to still be the availability of these things on the ground, which is why we're going to have to work with states. Health ministers and police ministers are meeting together. Don't remember the last time that happened, but we're meeting together later this month to ensure that there's policing on the ground of these things as well. We are concerned that there is going to have to be the involvement of police because organised crime has got very deep into this. They recognise this as a very lucrative, informal market. And because it was basically open slather for too many years, it has become a very big problem that's going to be hard to get rid of.
You regulate it in the same way that other OECD countries do?
No, they don't. They don't. And what you'll see is since I made the announcement I made in May, you're seeing country after country say that they're going to take the same approach that we have in Australia announced. You've seen France do it, you've seen UK start to shift to it, even though several months ago they wanted to regulate it. There's a bit of a talk, mainly sponsored by the tobacco industry, frankly, in this country, that it's all gone too far. We should just raise the white flag and accept that vaping is now a part of the Australian way of life.
They're arguing, yeah, it should be regulated and you should do, that way you'll deal with the black market.
So all those stores that are set up down the road from schools, that's all fine. Like, this is utter rubbish. This is a cynical attempt to recruit young people to nicotine.
But it would be illegal for young people to buy in a regulated
It's illegal
way.
now.
But
it's illegal
they're getting it illegally. That's
because
the
they're coming in, they're flooding in the borders. We've got to stop them coming into the country
Matilda?
in the first place.
You mentioned it is illegal now. I can think of two different places that sell vapes on the same block as a police station. It's clearly not that illegal. Like, it is, but...
illegal for kids.
Yes, but...
But kids are finding it easy to access them.
They're finding it very easy to access them because they've flooded, because there was this false distinction between nicotine and non-nicotine vapes, that non-nicotine vapes could come into the country and be distributed very widely in the community, but every time we test these non-nicotine vapes, they're filled with nicotine. Not to mention 200 chemicals, including things we use for nail polish remover, to de-ice runways, for weed killer. The 200 chemicals in and of themselves are causing harm.
The question was about whether what evidence we have that this ban is actually going to crack down on that. The vapes have been... We're not meant to be having these disposable vapes constantly. We clearly do. Why will this be different?
No, the problem is we are. The border is open. The problem is Greg Hunt tried to the import control regulation I'm proposing to put in. To his credit, my predecessor, Greg Hunt, tried to put that in. He was rolled by the Coalition Party room when they were in government within 10 days. And so the regulation was taken off. The border has been open since, and there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of
How many extra police
things.
are you going to put on this? Because the actual policing is going to have to be huge if there is this level of a black market that's so embedded.
Well, the problem is that it's not a black market, it's an informal market. These are being sold in vape stores as non-nicotine vapes with nicotine in them, which is why we've said we've just got to get rid of the whole lot. You know, we've got to get rid of disposable vapes, which are an environmental disaster as much as a health disaster. We've just got to get rid of the whole lot. And the only vapes that will be able to be sold in Australia will be pharmaceutical-style packaging. They'll be sold in pharmacies only on prescription.
But doctors aren't prescribing them very much, are they?
No, we'll have to consider broadening the way in which you can get access to a script.
Because that's another critique of the current system.
Yeah, we're going to have to deal with that. But to the extent they are a genuine therapeutic good to help hardened smokers kick the habit, not a recreational product for kids, then we'll have to continue to allow that.
All right, Marcus, I want to bring you back in. Not a vapor yourself, right?
No, not myself.
Just to clarify, no vaping in here, let me tell you. No. But what have you observed?
Well, I think at school it's very multifaceted. I don't think there's one specific reason as to why everyone's vaping. I guess, as mentioned before, the marketing of the vapes, it's colourful. It seems like it's almost like a kid's toy, like a lolly, or it doesn't have the same impact on young people that, let's say, cigarettes do. I think that's one of the main issues for young people. And young people are told, especially at school, about the risks of vaping. But I think especially it's become such a social thing as well. Like, all your friends vape and the school tells you not to. And so people, I think there's so many reasons, like the social and also like the marketing like reasons behind it as to why young people fall into vaping.
So is it hard to say no to vaping then?
I think in comparison to cigarettes, yes. I think young people in particular, they see it more as a social thing. If all your friends vape, then to them it's almost like a social expectation that either you fit in or you don't. And I think a lot of young people in particular have that fear of just not fitting in.
Wow.
Year 12, schools are reporting Year 12 doing exams right now are having to put nicotine patches on to get through an exam because they're not able to vape for 3 hours. This is where we've got...
Keith, do you support the changes?
I think enforcement is the key, and it's not just vaping, it's also illegal tobacco. We've seen an enormous spike in the last 18 months of illegal tobacco. I was quite shocked in my own electorate to see illegal tobacco and illegal vapes being sold across the counter. And we've seen sophisticated criminal networks get involved in this, where there's an earn or burn, where there's a threat to sell it, and if you don't, we'll burn your store down. And there's often vulnerable migrant communities who are being asked to sell these. And it has to be about enforcement, and it can't just be left to local councils to try and patrol this, because it's just not good enough.
Yeah. I think we're talking all about enforcement and cracking down on the border and all of this. And this is going to sound like a joke, but I'm genuinely serious. Is there discussion about culturally, like vaping, the best thing we have at the moment is that it's really uncool? Like it's not what the cigarettes have, that branding. Like, are we thinking about cultural aspects of this to ensure that we're not having influencers normalise it, speaking to social media about, the amount of people with just a vape in their hands. They're not smoking it, so it's not necessarily getting picked up by the, moderation, the AI. Like, genuinely, the damage of, like, every cool villain in a movie smoking a cigarette has been immeasurable. Is there any thought going towards a soft power approach to vaping when it comes to it?
Love that, soft power approach to vaping. Have you thought about it?
We have thought about it, and some of the legislation we have in place is seeking to bring some of those controls, which include social media controls on tobacco advertising effectively, to vapes as well. That is a legal loophole that we're seeking to address in the Parliament.
Please.
Can I just add, I think it's really important in any public health intervention, and working in 70 countries around the world doing mostly public health interventions, it has to be a wraparound effect. So you have to have the social influence, you have to have the legality, you have to have the treatment, you have to have the counselling. And so this is an excellent tool. I'm pleased that my children won't be able to have access at such an early age to vapes, but it really has to be a holistic treatment approach from a medical perspective when you've got people with such heavy addictions.
And could we be, as you say, work in 70 countries, could we be coming in too late to this?
No,
Given it's so widespread among young people now.
I think looking at the success that Australia has had with tobacco, I think there is an opportunity, to actually take a really holistic approach. I think that there are some really excellent public health wins that this country has had, and I think when you look at it from 360 degree, it is possible. But I'm an NGO person and idealist at heart, so.